a massive welcome to you all. Thank you so much for joining us. This is the Aspect workshop on FinTech as an example of good practice in university engagement with business. And as you're probably aware, because you signed up for it, it is part of the Aspect annual event series, which is running across September and October. You may have been to some previous workshops and have a look back on the Aspect website because there's plenty more workshops still to come. So, do keep an eye out for future workshops. So just another welcome, just keeping another eye on who else we've got joined us. And yeah, I think we seem to have pretty much most people. So now, it is my great delight to welcome our panel. So I'm just scrolling down my notes, bear with me. We have, very pleased to say, we have Stuart Harrison, who is the founder and co-director of FinTech West. Thank you, Stuart. Give us a little wave. So that's Stuart. So I'll ask Stuart to introduce himself properly in a minute, but FinTech West is the representative body for FinTech in the West of England and the Southwest of England. And our other panel member here is Professor Jon Beaverstock. Jon is a Professor of International Management. He's based in the School of Management at the University of Bristol. And I should briefly introduce myself. I'm Ruth Welters. I also work in the same faculty as Jon at the University of Bristol, and I'm the Business Engagement Coordinator for the Faculty of Social Sciences. So thank you to our panel. So I would like to hand over to yourself now, Stuart, firstly. If you could just give us a brief introduction on your background and also tell us a bit more about FinTech West.
Okay. Thanks, Ruth. Hi, everyone. As Ruth said, Stuart Harrison, founder and co-director of FinTech West, which is now the representative body and part of FinTech National Network, which we regularly meet as an organisation. Didn't start out that way, but it's grown into quite a high-profile organisation in the region and in FinTech nationally, which is great. However, I do wear a number of hats. I do a lot of mentoring. I'm involved with predominantly University West of England, which from henceforth I'll refer to as UWE, in case anyone doesn't know that reference, and also University of Bristol, where I mentor and obviously do a certain amount of work. Most of my background, however, is not financial services. It's actually very much technology startups, scale-ups. I have been involved, obviously, with the FinTech element in financial services over the last sort of 5 years or so, but predominantly is a technology background. I mentor at QTech, which is the Quantum Technology Enterprise Centre, and part of, or a programme that's part of University of Bristol. And I'm also a mentor in resident at UWE's Bristol Business School. That probably covers enough details, I think.
Thank you so much, Stuart, and we'll come back and ask you some questions soon. Jon, would you like to give an introduction on who you are, please?
Yes, my name's Jon Beaverstock. I'm at the New School of Management in the University of Bristol. My research interests focus really on the competitiveness of the City of London, and over 2 decades or more I've done a lot of research on the city as a financial centre, on the globalisation and management of professional service firms, but also the importance of place and the economic geography of the city. So I did my PhD at the University of Bristol in the Department of Geography, and I held chairs in economic geography at Loughborough University and at the University of Nottingham before I came to Bristol in 2014. So I'm very much an interdisciplinary member of the New School of Management, very much interested in firms, competitiveness, but also the importance of the strengths of places as well, like the city and like the Bath Bristol region.
Unmute myself. Thank you for introducing yourselves. And I should have said actually to all our participants that we are running this, as you've probably already guessed, as an in conversation. I've got some pre-prepared questions for both of our panel members, but please do use that Q&A function to put your questions to the panel, and let's keep it as interactive as we can. So I'm going to kick off with Stuart first. Stuart, we've been talking over the past sort of 6 months, I guess, and understand from yourself that you've worked with different universities over quite a long time. So it'd be great if you could just go back and say, when you first got in touch with a university or group of universities, why? What is it you were looking for from the university?
I could take the rest of the session in answering that, because it's pretty convoluted and not obvious. In fact, obviously knowing this question was going to be asked, I gave up writing up any pre-prepared notes, because it ended up like an essay. Essentially, and this is bizarre to say in these times, but originally I wanted some office space, and we actually were starting to look around. I'd moved from a situation where I was very much sort of living in Bristol but working around the country, spending my life on the M4 and the Paddington train as you do. And so I decided 5 years or so that I really wanted to entirely focus on the Southwest, and I wanted office space. So I went to various sort of growth co-working accelerator hubs to see what they had available. It was didn't matter whether they were universities or not. It just turned out 3 were very much university backed. And I came across this place called Future Space, which is up by UE, part of the University Enterprise Zone. And I loved it because it was very Google-esque, and it had a real sense of space. And I liked what they were telling me, and so signed up to be based there. And that still wasn't really obviously any university engagement, but what it did was put me on the campus and the campus environment. The business school was literally 100 yards up the hill, and because I was involved, even though the organisation based at Future Space wasn't FinTech West, or in fact the forerunner at the time of FinTech West, which was Bristol FinTech, it was a useful potential connection. So I knew UE had a strong sort of accounting, law and finance part to the business school. So I was traipsing up there, seeing what I could find, and telling them that they really ought to be doing something on FinTech, because UE was very well positioned, doing more commercially, the accounting, the legal side, the sort of focus on professional services. At the same time, because I was only partially involved in this business, but I had access to that sort of campus environment, I was I was doing a lot of mentoring outside of the universities, and I thought, well, there's got to be some great sort of spin-up, startup opportunities to help along, and so I offered my services, said I'd be very happy to help them, whatever they wanted, really. So guest lectures or mentoring, etc. And there was quite a long period of nothing happening. So after those conversations, so I just left it to them, or left them to it. And oddly enough, my first real active involvement was with the University of Bristol, because I was at a FinTech event, and I bumped into this nice chap called Andy, who happened to sit next to me, and he was from QTech, and he was saying how they were just setting up QTech, and they were looking for mentors. And as my degree was at QTech, or quantum deep science, as my degree was in theoretical physics, I thought, perfect mentoring role for me. So I got involved there, became a mentor, and I do the sort of things where I throw myself into it and do far more than perhaps I should. So they said I only needed 4 hours and a month, and I ended up doing sort of 2 days a month, which was great, with 3 companies there. And eventually UE came back to me and said they were thinking of setting up this FinTech MSc, and so I helped them help them in a small part. They give myself and FinTech West far too much credit for helping roll out the MSc, which is clearly the MSc is great profile for the region, probably not so useful for fintechs per se. And then again, just wandering around because of that locality, I stumbled into a contact and said, you ought to speak to the team entrepreneur guys who were running this new sort of degree course, part of the business school for people that wanted to get skills on or do a degree in entrepreneurship, essentially, not necessarily to start companies, but to actually obviously learn the skills so they could be better employees as well as obviously potentially run companies. And then the sort of involvement with UE got stronger when I was starting up another software company with a co-director, and we worked with the computer science department at UE, and we actually had a number of students develop the software for this business called Invest West, which has been doing very well in the region to introduce businesses to investors. And there's lots of different, so there's been lots of different threads. Obviously now we're working together, which is great because of the FinTech connection. They're all sort of intertwined. But in some ways there have also been sort of elements of silos there. When I've been working, say, in the TE side, but they've no idea what I've been doing on Invest West, and then on the Invest West side, but you know, people in FinTech don't know anything about that. So yeah, it's quite a lot of academic involvement now, which I love doing, but yeah, it's been quite a long progress and a lot of persistence in order to get there.
Brilliant, thank you. So as you were speaking, because the title of our session here is about what makes for good practice, I was just trying to pull out a couple of things that I think that you've made there. One of very much about proximity, I think, at the start, you know, being in the same room with people. Another thing I think you raised very interesting was that it was about your own personal profile, and I guess networking is a key part of that. So from what you said, it all sounds very positive. I'd be interested to know if there's a flip side to that. Have you ever experienced any frustrations as coming from the private sector, working with the university sector? And I'm not asking you about specific universities, just generally universities as a sector.
Oh yes. No, it's in fact, I could in this part, and I didn't say I was going to do this, but I certainly can offer it. Give some feedback based on the FinTech ecosystem research we did earlier this year, and because I went through my notes made there, and I thought that would be some useful feedback as well. I from my own personal experience, I have to say you're right. Proximity was an important part, because would I be working as close to the universities? So I think getting engaged with UE quite a lot initially. If I wasn't on at Future Space regularly networking there, it might never have happened, or I might go as far to say it probably would have never happened. But once I was engaging with UE, I realised some of the benefits that could be made, and therefore I wanted to do more with the University of Bristol, and obviously the QTech connection helped a lot there as well. But I think in general, the frustration, there's several elements of frustration which I can, it doesn't relate to a single university anyway, is probably in no particular order, as they say. The speed of response has been very frustrating on occasions, particularly when you're coming from a background, and I speak for many of the sort of FinTech organisations as well, that particularly the smaller ones. When you come from a background, when you're starting a new business and they're young, they're dynamic, they want to move quickly, and you know, getting the response from and I won't say just universities, it's larger organisations can be slow. It's just as bad, in quotes, if you like, with local authorities and large corporates. That collaboration with larger organisations is a common frustration point for startups and scale-ups. Other key aspects of which again are similarly related to large organisations is where on earth do you start? I've had people come to me and say, could you introduce me to someone at UE? And I'm like, yeah, who? Where? Roughly, what do you want to know? And I did come across, anyone who knows UE, you probably know a chap called Craig, who's sadly going to Scotland, but he was a fantastic single point of contact initially, where you could often find him in the coffee bar and say, Craig, I need to know about blah, blah, blah. Who should I speak to? And that sort of central point of reference to be sort of farmed out or referred to other areas is absolutely invaluable. Because a lot of people will just give up. I put far too much effort in, my initial sort of involvement. I could have done, it would have been useful to do less. There's definitely frustrations on that point. When I have got involved in companies, I think another common thing that often came up was the IP and how IP is handled. Clearly, obviously, if you're engaging on particular projects and how universities handle their contribution to projects, or in particular, obviously, if they're doing spin-outs. But if it's useful, I'm quite happy to run through some of the comments from the ecosystem research.
I think I'll pause you there. Thank you. I appreciate those comments. I just want to say that we have got a question on ethical banking, investing in banking. I'm just going to, just to say, whoever posed that question, I've noted it. I'm just going to leave that for a little bit later. I would like to put a question just to the audience again, if you can go to the chat. What we're going to do now is, obviously Stuart's been talking about some general thoughts about just businesses and universities in general. It would help us, our panel, to understand how many of our participants are FinTech, particularly interested in FinTech. So can I just ask the audience, if you are interested in FinTech or FinTech specialist or whatever, just type in yes in the chat box now, and that'll just give us a little bit of a flavour, if you would, as to whether we're talking to a more generalist audience or to a very specific FinTech audience. So thank you. I can start to see that we've got 2 yeses already. That's great. So because the next question that I want to ask, and this is again just to go to Stuart, but fairly briefly, is just to say we're here to talk about here to talk about FinTech, and in a minute I'm going to say what is FinTech. So we've got five yeses so far, so we'll take it that at least some of our audience are FinTech specialists, perhaps not all. So Stuart, an answer that covers both specialists and the non-specialists. What is FinTech?
Okay, good question. I think I'm happier to answer that now than I was 2 or 3 years ago, because it was whatever it meant to whoever was involved at the time. In the reports and the research we've done, we've defined it very much as the use of technology to enhance and add greater efficiency to financial services. So that's pretty much what you would expect. In some ways, it sort of determines that every financial organization that wants to do anything nowadays would be a FinTech, but clearly we're talking about organizations that have started with the premise of utilizing technology to bring services to the financial services market rather than adding on technology afterwards.
So I keep turning my microphone off. Thank you, Stuart, that's great. And I'm sure if anyone wants to know more specifically about FinTech, then you can either get in touch with myself or with Stuart directly, and I'll let you have our contact details at the end. Jon, you've been sat there listening in. It's great. Thank you for your patience. So it's great. I mean, this is very timely, is that you've just, in the last couple of weeks, been successful in securing some funding to carry out some research, and that is jointly with Stuart here and with his colleagues at FinTech West. And this research, Jon, is on using some of your prior research from the City of London and applying that to Bristol Bath area, but obviously with the potential to apply that to any region. So it'd be great, you know, following on from Stuart's answer on what is FinTech and what's the value of it to us in the regions.
Yeah, so I think first of all, the project is an impact accelerator account project from the Economic and Social Research Council. So you're absolutely right. It's me sharing my knowledge and best practice of financial services clustering and competitiveness in the context of the City of London, and how that could be spun out, as it were, to the FinTech ecosystem in the Bath-Bristol region. I think what's interesting about this is a number of things. I think the first thing is about the role of FinTech in wealth creation, and the role of FinTech in putting a driver for economic growth in a region. And given the industrial strategy and the importance of strength in places, you know, for the Bath-Bristol region, it's a really important future multiplier for regional development in professional and financial services. I think the second thing, and this really sort of carries on from Stuart's thoughts about fin in tech, I think that actually when you begin to look at it very carefully, you can break it down into different sorts of attributes. So, you know, there's fin, or the financial, or the financials, financial services, small firms, medium-sized, large firms. And then you've got the tech, you know, technology, technological change, innovation, disruptive innovation. So it's that blend. And when you begin to look around the landscape of FinTech, it's very much populated by, you know, innovators and startups and disruptors in that classic sense. They're driving innovation and they're driving, you know, the next wave, the next cycle. And it happens to be in the context of financial services. I think the third thing, and this is really important for the Bath-Bristol region and any regions, and that's important in developing talent, local talent, developing skills and competencies in next generation professional and financial services. So the importance of developing the labour market and also upskilling. And, you know, in Bristol and Bath case, and in many regions outside of London, it's about how those regions can compete for talent and for other resources with London. So, you know, it is very much an issue about competition for resources. And I think finally, and this is something which I think is important for inclusive growth, and that's important of FinTech in inclusivity, how it can take forward inclusive social economy and social enterprise. So thinking about FinTechs intersect with social enterprise, not-for-profit, and that part of the economy, the social economy. So I think sort of all four of those wrapped together gives an indication as to why this is timely and why this is important for the Bristol Bath region, but also important for other regions in the UK.
Thanks. And Jon, just to let you know, in the chat, Helen, who's an academic involved in FinTech, has put a little bit of a message in there. So Helen, again, if you want to contact Jon directly, yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. So Jon, I think what you just said, I think will ring a lot of, you know, chime a lot with our academic colleagues. But to push you on this, because a lot of, I think, you know, when universities say this stuff, it sounds very grand and it's, you know, it sounds all great. What's in it for you? Why you as a professor, you could do all this research, you know, on your own. You've set up, you know, you and Stuart have set up this collaboration. Why do you want to do this work in partnership rather than just from afar, as it were?
Yeah, I think there's been a sea change, I think, in academia and the way in which stakeholders can actually be in co-production, collaboration with the research project. So working closely with stakeholders at the initiation of the project to actually develop a relationship and to seek knowledge from both parties at the outset. So I think that's the first point. So there's very much an impact agenda. It's not driven by political forces. I think now there's an expectation that research has to be impactful and that stakeholders are a part of that research process. And in organisations like FinTech, in other professional services, the success of the research endeavour is to gain trust and insight into the organisations through developing medium and long-term relationships. And as an academic, one of my roles as a social science, critical thinking academic, is to think critically, and in order to do that is to actually, be a part of this particular process with stakeholders sort of at the centre of the research process, not as a beneficiary or one, who one would engage with at the end of the project to say, okay, here's my 5 findings, thank you very much, I'm now moving on to the next project. In something like FinTech, it's a community of practice that really is about socialisation. It is about engagement. So I think if I were to sit in my nice little bedroom steady office now at home and just sort of sit and be a scholar in my little ivory tower with little communication with Stuart. Stuart as a subject rather than as a collaborator and cooperator, I think the research would be certainly very much a shadow of what it could be with the engagement of Stuart in this particular process from the outset. And I think that's really important. From the outset, Stuart is going to help me develop the questions not only unique to the Bath Bristol ecosystem, but also questions which can be relevant to other city regions. That isn't London, so that's important. And I can bring that academic, theoretical, and also empirical experience into this as well. So that's why it's just sort of socialisation between myself and Stuart, and also coming up with the right questions with the stakeholder at the inset of this particular endeavour.
Great. I mean, it does sound that things have changed perhaps a bit in the universities, and I'm not saying Bristol University, but universities in general. Stuart, is that how it feels to you?
Oh yeah, very much so. I can see some great strides forward over the, I was going to say last year's, but it's not even last year's, probably just the last few months, where there is more willingness to engage and get involved in joint activities, not just research. But I mean, it's interesting how John and I, excuse me, came together because we've done this FinTech ecosystem research. That has been an ongoing sort of project. So obviously looking at the ecosystem and the challenges that have been raised, how can we improve on that? And I did a sort of follow-up document, and just happened to, well, I think through you, Ruth, happened to start talking to John about this. And then I was completely unaware of John's background and skills, and John was unaware of the sort of challenges and the experience we had, and it was a sort of, to use the phrase, no-brainer to get together, to work together and see how we can tackle some of those challenges. So I'm really excited about the project, but this isn't a one-off. I see this happening on more and more occasions now, and it's certainly to be encouraged. And I think as well, across academia, there does seem to be more of a interest in getting involved in the community, the business community, at all levels, not just at the sort of corporate level. And John mentioned the talent side, and that clearly is very important. it's important to for a small business or large business or the community. But one of the things we found from the research, that the innovation and the design, the growth of the FinTech community came out of the entrepreneurial nature of the founders, who were predominantly coming from a technology background. Even though we've got a strong financial services sector down here, the impact they had was minimal in getting the FinTech sort of ecosystem off the ground. And that is another area we've been working on, is that collaboration as well, because clearly along with the academic collaboration, that is an area that the FinTechs want to see happen as well.
Thank you. So we've got this question that I flagged up earlier, and I'd like to devote the next maybe 5 minutes or so to just a bit more of a quick fire responses to questions from the audience. Now, we've only got one at the moment, so if you are there and have a burning question, this can be on the general, good practice in business collaboration with universities. So going right back to start, got a question on that, put that in now, please. If you've got some more specific FinTech questions, stick them in now. Any other questions? So I am going to, sorry, my computer's trying to restart, don't do that. I'm going to put this question to you, Jon, and I'm going to hope that while you're answering it, we'll have some more questions come in. So please, everybody, stick your questions in the Q&A box. Jon, this is a question from an anonymous attendee. Ethical investing and banking is on the rise. What are the steps being taken by universities and organisations to teach or encourage both professionals and students to pursue this area? So ethical investing and banking, what's been done to encourage students to pursue that area?
Yes, so I'll just reflect on my time at the University of Bristol, where in the School of Accounting and Finance, in the School of Management, there is a very much a focus on social responsibility and also on ethical behaviour. That runs across modules in our undergraduate programs, whether it's banking or organisation theory, and also across our taught masters programs as well. So in terms of education, teaching and learning, we're very much minded that we do need to ensure that our students are developed as responsible citizens, and also that they have exposure to an inclusive and a social responsibility in their studies. And I think this is why it's so important to have business and management, accounting and finance, economics folded into a faculty of social sciences, which give a social science critical environment for students to learn and be responsible.
Could I add a bit to that as well?
Please.
Because it's quite an important area. Well, it's a very important area for Bristol and Bath. And one of the things we've found in comparing notes with other regions is each region tends to develop a particular expertise in a sector according to where they've been strong traditionally. So, for instance, Cardiff strong on insurance, Leeds payments, Manchester retail, and so on. We didn't really have that in the Bristol and Bath region, and what we found that there's a very strong and high percentage of fintechs based around ethical finance and banking for the unbanked and so on and so forth. And that has almost become the regional USP compared to how we factor against other regions, and something we're obviously very proud of. There's even a new Sharia finance platform launching, and you would predict that to be London or Northwest or somewhere, but very proud that's coming out of Bristol.
And to just add some more to the answer, of course, on the research side at the University of Bristol, a civic university with a stake in the city region, and the university has an institute, an initiative, a Bristol local economy initiative, working with social enterprise, around things like the Bristol Pound, and we've also got colleagues working on financial exclusion, and a lack of access to cash. So there's lots of research which is focusing on, as it were, a social responsibility and an inclusive approach to finance and banking, and that cuts across not only business and management studies, but also other social science disciplines at the university as well, sociology, politics law, for example.
Okay, we've got a couple more questions. So Stuart, this is one to you. So Stuart, it says, you touched on that it can be difficult to navigate through a university, for a business to navigate and to find the right contact in the university. So Stuart, what would your advice be to a university wanting to contact a business or a target organisation that the university would like to work with and aren't currently?
It's a bit harder now because there's not so much networking, obviously, but it would basically be the way it worked perfectly for me was the Craig model, where there is someone who gets out there, makes themselves known, that they're not necessarily there representing any particular department or, if you like, silo within the university, but they can be a point of contact for anyone external who then guides them as to where they need to go. And I think as well, it needs to be get out there and get known and network, communicate. I feel, although there are strong moves within universities to reach out further, it's still a little bit at the marketing stage rather than the delivering on that marketing. But it very positive signs. But that's the number one thing I think that would help.
Okay, fantastic. Well, we've already got 3 more questions. So this is one to both of you. I'll start with yourself, Stuart. This is from Andrew Ray, one of my colleagues at Bristol. So his question is, what does success look like in your collaboration? Is it as simple as fintech companies adopting new methods or services, and would they tell us? Or is it a more subtle change in the overall approach of the sector and sector organisations? So Stuart first.
No pressure if it's a question from the University of Bristol then. I think the immediate success is that that we find some or learn some lessons to apply to the ecosystem. I mean, obviously we've got this big aim of turning the ecosystem into a cluster, and how that's achieved. I think there's a lot of people who'd like that to happen within the region. Clearly it could happen organically, but there's what can we learn in particular from London and its success in financial services, but from ultimately any angle that we can apply and help various stakeholders, not just the fintechs, perhaps involved financial services. I do a lot of work with Hargreaves Lansdowne, for instance, and local authorities such as West of England Combined Authority, as well as universities. So it's really pulling together all the stakeholders to try and grow what they say is an important sector for them.
Jon?
Yes, well, I think that's, I think you're looking across different sorts of timescales. So a short term, a medium term, a longer term, and whether or not it's something quite pragmatic. So, for example, a success for the collaboration could be, in the London cluster, fintech firms use executive search firms for recruiting fin, but for tech, they have well-established networks. What do the Bath Bristol fintech firms do? Do they use executive search? Should they? Shouldn't they? So there's a sort of a translation of practice. But I think in the medium to longer term, it's about how the collaboration can actually develop the community of practice, and develop a sense of agglomeration economies and a sense of knowledge spillovers in those classic cluster innovation geographies, if you like. And that's a medium to long term aspect of the collaboration. Obviously, it's very difficult to say, this is the input, this is the outcome. I think that we're working also within, a very changing national context, economic, political, social, and I think that what would be really helpful is, for when myself and Stuart get deeper into our collaborations and development, is to, look at those pragmatic issues which London is doing, Bristol Bath may not be doing, but they could do, and it could actually, lead on to more success for the cluster development. So that's how I would see it. But it may actually, again, the external factors are really significant in this particular landscape, and it'd be interesting to see what happens, over the next 12 months or so, not only with the pandemic, but also with issues around Brexit and so on and so forth. So, that's obviously some challenging times ahead.
Thank you. Right, then the next two questions are ones that I'm actually going to try to cover because they're a bit more general. So, Linda, you've posed a question. I just would like, if you are able, could you just let us know if you are from a business or from a university? Because I think that this may help us to get the right answer to you. So, Linda Damaral, you put in a question. If you could just let us know whether you are a business person or a university person. So Linda's question is, because I'm going to put this question back out to the business engagement professionals from the universities, who I think we have quite a lot on this call. So Linda's question is there a well-known real-life case study of a successful joint venture between a business startup and a university? It'd be really useful to see what critical components were in the mix to achieve a win-win sustainable outcome. Now, obviously, I'd like to say I've got some, and I'm sure every business engagement person on this call will go, yes, of course there is. This is an opportunity, so Linda's put this in the Q&A. Business engagement people, if you're quick off the mark and you can access your links and you wish to share them, if you've got some case studies that you wish to highlight, then please go ahead and do that. I think the answer is yes, that I'm not going to give you one of mine off the top of my head, but absolutely, I think that's a really critical question. And it leads nicely on to the question that Olga asked, which is about, are we going to make this all available, all these findings? So I just wanted to take this opportunity to highlight that Jon and Stuart and myself, we're very lucky to have another parallel project going on at the same time, which is also funded by the Aspect Network, so it's very good timing. And this project that's going to run in parallel with the work that they've already talked about is specifically to do what Aspect are calling a deep dive into what makes good practice in business and university engagement. And again, we're focusing on FinTech as our sector. So I can answer for the outcomes of that very much so. They are intended to be completely available to anybody. The focus will be, again, possibly on people doing similar roles such as me and other universities. We're doing this jointly with Glasgow University, and we anticipate actually that we're going to include quite a lot of other universities plus their regional FinTech sectors. And we're going to, when I say we, this is not all me, across the board, we're going to be talking to FinTech companies, and again, asking them similar questions that we've asked Stuart today, and just pulling out from the business sector what their experience is and trying to put that into a good practice guide. That will be done in the autumn. We expect that to be available in the spring next year. And I'll just go to Jon just very briefly. I'm assuming that the work that you're doing now with Stuart, that will also be available.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So again, I'm going to share contact details at the end. Obviously, you can contact me or contact Jon or Stuart directly to let us know that you would like to see that when it's ready.
Just if I could say as well that the FinTech, the prior FinTech ecosystem research that FinTech West did in conjunction with White Cat Consulting that's also freely available, and I'm happy to make that available to anyone that's interested or requests it.
Thank you. No, I think that'd be great. Yeah, so Linda, so that's useful to know. Thank you that you are from business. So yes, I think, Linda, you'll find that a lot of universities do have these examples because it's something that we do like to talk about. Andrew from Bristol is saying lots of examples. Sustainability is more interesting and difficult. It requires multiple projects and points of contact. Don't put all your eggs into one basket. Carol Ann from Scotland says Interface, which is a Scotland project, has lots of lovely case studies on the website. I think we're going to have to share these links with you separately afterwards because I don't think that you can see them. So we'll make sure that you get these links, all participants get these links, and we can add to those. So I'll just take a note of that one, and thank you very much for sharing that. Right, sorry, I think we've got, checking if we've got any more questions, bear with me. I think we have covered, I really hope that I haven't skipped any questions, so apologies if I have, and I hope that we've covered all the questions. As I said, you can get in touch with us later on, so I'm just skipping, I've got so many screens open. So we're coming up, on my clock it's about 5:02, so I think I'm going to ask both Stuart and Jon very briefly in 30 seconds if you would like to make any final comments to our audience today. Stuart.
30 seconds. I think we've got the foundations both in FinTech collaboration and collaboration generally with the universities to build on, but we can't let up. It's, as I say, I am a little bit worried about the actual delivery side of it, rather than just talking about doing it. I do think there needs to be some work on both sides, because clearly, startups, scale-ups can't expect larger organisations to move as quickly as themselves, but equally, universities could do with moving a bit quicker as well. So it's both sides working on various aspects to improve the collaboration.
Jon, actually another question's just popped up, so I'm going to put this question to you if I may. So this question is from someone called George, who runs a community interest company in East London that supports local initiatives. The question is there a potential collaboration between FinTech and the mainstream banks?
I will have to think about that, and if George can email me, I can then send him some.
Well, I'll answer that now. That is a key aspect of part of what's been driving FinTech has been the regulation and the move towards open banking. You will find many FinTechs have started because they don't have, they want to do their own stuff using technology, and they haven't had relationships with banks, but many more are now actually working with banks and delivering solutions to the banks that otherwise the banks would have never been able to deliver. And we've got many examples of that just in the Bristol and Bath region.
Fantastic.
So I think that's a great example why I should be working with Stuart in the sense that it's bridging the academic knowledge with that deep knowledge and understanding that Stuart has in the co-production of the research. So
brilliant, thank you. So participants, so we're coming up to the end. So what I would like to ask you to do is to not sign out when it ends, because we would like to send you to a survey. So just a little bit of feedback, it'll be very brief, just to give both us, the panel, and Aspect more generally, just some feedback. So I'm just asking you, as it comes up to 5 o'clock and you're off to get your tea, just be slightly patient and just wait a couple of minutes, and then we'd be so grateful if you could fill in that feedback form. Oh, George says thank you, John.
Thank you, George.
That's good. So, as I keep saying, I'm going to share my screen now, and then that will give you the contact details for us. Just bear with me, I'm just going to share the screen. I'm hoping that you can see the screen. John, can you see?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so I'll read these out for everybody. So participants, if you're not sure who to contact, just contact me. My email, ruth.welters@bristol.ac.uk. Mobile number, that's my work mobile, so feel free to call that, 07791 520 750. If you've got a specific question for Stuart, he's at FinTech West, so you can look at the FinTech West website. Stuart mentioned that report that he's happy to share, so do ask Stuart if you'd like to see that report. Stuart.Harrison@whitecapconsulting.co.uk, and John at University of Bristol, jonathan.beaverstock@bristol.ac.uk. And if you haven't had time to capture that, I'm sure you could go back to Aspect, Adam, who sent you the information about this workshop, you know, if you're just not quite sure who to contact. So do feel free to contact me and our other panel. So, bang on time, I just would like to take these last few moments to say thank you so much to Stuart for devoting your time to this and for sharing all your expertise and for giving us such a wealth of input there. It's really appreciated, thank you. And likewise to John, thank you so much for sharing all your expertise areas and giving, I think, people a lot of inspiration and things to think about. So I'm just checking, our panelists are saying thank you, really insightful. And that is it for me. It's 5 o'clock on my computer. So I think we all now just wait if we have a few moments, and then we will all be sent through to the link to the feedback. So thank you, everybody. And we're getting some more thank yous. So thank you all.